I could feel myself going forward towards the light. As I got closer to the light, I noticed the light was brighter than any other light I had seen in my life, but it did not hurt my eyes. The feeling I had as I was getting closer was a feeling of love, kind of being in your mother's arms, but much more. As I approached the light, I felt no fear, nor was I worried about anything. I felt everything was okay. As I walked out of the tunnel, everything got very cloudy, but I could make out figures of people walking towards me. I did not see their faces. They just walked by me on my left and right. I walked further away from the tunnel and got scared again. If you like near-death experiences, consider subscribing. Also like the video so you can receive more interesting and eye-opening stories. Alright, let's get to the story. Hey there guys, my name is Ronnie Duncan. I was sledding down an alleyway that intersected with an avenue at the bottom. I could not stop before entering the avenue. I went out into the street and struck the front bumper of the white Cadillac with my head. That very moment, I left myself and was out on the sidewalk. I was not standing on the ground. I was hovering. There was a girl, my age, standing on the ground next to me, holding her head and screaming. I could hear her, and I looked at her. She was very afraid of what she was seeing, so I turned and looked in the direction she was looking. It was me, and I was in the process of about to be run over by the car. At that time, the knowledge came to me that if I wanted any chance to live, that I needed to slow the car down, so when the tire went over me, the body had to be on its back. I knew somehow that if the car ran me over on my stomach, it would not survive. I slowed the car down and was directing it when to go over the body. I did get it to run over the body facing up, and now I had to have the same thing happen with the back tire. The car, being so low to the ground, was making the body that was my body to roll over and over. Once it got near the rear tire, I slowed down the car, again, so it ran over me facing upwards. It did. It ran me over facing upwards. Now the body was stuck behind the rear tire and a big clump of snow that was stuck to the car. I watched the car drag my body down the road until it intersected the next road. When the car hit the dip in the road, the body fell out. I remember being glad that it was over, but the girl was still screaming. She screamed all the way through this experience. Because she was screaming, a man came out of his house at the back door, looked towards us, and looked in the direction the girl, that is we, were looking. He saw my body, and he ran over to it. The body was crawling, using only the left arm. I think it was trying to go home. Not sure. While the man was running over to my body, I tried to tell the girl that I was okay. But she couldn't hear me nor see me. I tried to grab her, but my hands went through her. That was the point where I was beginning to understand what was happening. I looked towards my body. The man arrived and grabbed it and turned it over, cradling its head. He looked back towards his wife and said, "Call an ambulance, the kid is dying." The girl was crying very hard, holding her head. At that time and moment, I was told to go back or come forward. I went over to my body. I did not walk, I just floated. I was hovering over my body when again I was told, "It's getting late. Make up your mind what you're going to do." As I was looking down, I said, "I am not going in there." The body was bleeding out of its mouth, ears, and nose. I could see the pain it was in, so I said, "I am not going back in there." That is when I left the site. It sounded like some kind of machine turned on, and I was in this very dark tunnel with a very tiny spot of light way, way far in front of me. I could feel myself going forward towards the light. As I got closer to the light, I noticed the light was brighter than any other light I had seen in my life, but it did not hurt my eyes. The feeling I had, as I was getting closer, was a feeling of love, kind of being in your mother's arms, but much more. As I approached the light, I felt no fear, nor was I worried about anything. I felt everything was okay. As I walked out of the tunnel, everything got very cloudy, but I could make out figures of people walking towards me. I did not see their faces. They just walked by me on my left and right. I walked further away from the tunnel and got scared again, afraid that I would not find my way back. I kept hearing water dripping like being in a tunnel with an echo. I walked some more and came upon a pair of steps. The steps were solid gold. I remember thinking that if I could take some of these steps back to my mother, everything would be fine. My mom was a widow for a long time and we suffered hardships along the way. On the side of the steps was a plaque and it read, "Flight ###." I can't remember the number, but it was a 3-digit number. That is when I heard or noticed someone coming down the stairs. I ran a short distance away from the steps and knelt down in the fog, so I would not be seen. As this person began to come down the steps, I could see his feet and ankles, then his legs. I felt now that I knew this person, but wasn't sure who it was. As he came down the steps, I could see his chest, and his chest had a white corsage on it. I should have known at that point who he was, but I didn't. My dad had a white corsage on his chest lying in his casket before we buried him. When his face came into view, I saw that it was my daddy. I was 6 years old when he died. I got up and started to run towards the stairs yelling, "Dad, Dad, oh Daddy, I am sorry for what I have done." He smiled at me. I could see his gold tooth, and he stopped coming down the steps. He then said to me, "It doesn't matter, as long as you are truly sorry for what you have done." I replied, "Yes, Dad, I am really sorry." Then he said, "Well then, that's all you need. How about you come to live with me for a while?" I answered, "Yes, I would like that." He stretched out his hand for me to come, and I did. He took me by the hand and turned around, and we started walking up the steps. We took a few steps and we stopped. He sighed and asked me, "What's wrong?" His head was down, looking towards the ground. He never looked at me again. I answered, "I can't go with you, Mommy and Richie, my little brother. We'll cry." At that very moment, I heard something like a record player going backwards. I felt pain, a lot of pain, and I could not breathe. I opened my eyes and saw a man holding me. It was the man who came out of his house when the girl was screaming. I tried to talk to him, but I could not talk. It hurt very badly to breathe. I finally got out the words. I am not proud of what I said, but I said, "I can't breathe, you son of a bitch." He said, "Okay, just hang on. An ambulance is on its way." There were at this time a lot of people around. They must have come there when I was gone. Some said they knew the man, and me sent them to tell my mother. Our apartment was a block away. As the ambulance was arriving, so did my mother. She fell in the snow running towards me, and I laughed to myself and commented. As we were traveling in the ambulance to leave, I remember going in and out of my body, watching my mother, the nurse, and myself. Every time we would hit a bump or make a turn, the pain was so bad that it threatened my life. I found out later that my body was crushed. Most of my ribs were broken and stuck into my lungs. My body cavity was filling up with blood. The doctors at the hospital told my mother there was nothing they could do. "He is filling up his cavity with blood, and if we cut him open, he will bleed out." I remember things going on, off, and on. My whole family was there at the hospital. 6 doctors were around me talking. My mother sent for a priest for my last rites. She did not know, nor did any doctor know what I knew. I was going to be okay. When Father T arrived, I tried to talk to him, but couldn't. I could only move my left arm and my head side to side. I kept reaching out to him over and over again. Father T looked into my eyes, and I shook my head no. We did not talk, but we did. He looked again in my eyes with a smile, as if saying, "You've been there and you're going to be okay." I shook my head, yes. He then told my mother he is going to be fine, and that I did not need last rites. She insisted that he did. As he began the last rites, we kept smiling at each other, like in conversation that we know but they don't. The hospital kept a 24-hour vigil over me, taking vitals at times. The doctors told my mother, if we can stabilize him, we will operate. I knew that there would be no operation. In the early morning hours, I fell asleep. The nurse panicked and started giving me oxygen and calling for help. Little did she know that blowing up my lungs with oxygen was piercing my lungs from the broken ribs. I could not fight her off, or the others that had answered her call for help. I could only move my left arm. Again, I left my body and watched as they tried to help. Finally, a male nurse said, "Take the oxygen off." And they did. I was fine. In the morning, the doctors began coming in, one by one. They were discussing my condition and could not explain what happened to me with each other. But I knew. Finally, the doctors went out and told my family, "We cannot explain it, but we cannot find any blood in his cavity. He is stable, and we will continue watching him. Later, during my hospital stay, they sent in psychiatrists to talk to me about my experience. I did not tell them anything,